the 16, you don't see him there?
Hi, and welcome back to our latest episode of On the Job with PORAC podcast. I'm Brian Marvel, president of PORAC, with PORAC Vice President Damon Kurtz joining us via Zoom. Today we have in David Mastagni of Mastagni Holstedt and Tim Talbot of Rains, Lucia, Stern, St. Phalle, and Silver, better known as RLS. We're here really to talk about Senate Bill 2, and also that both of them will be presenting at our annual symposium to talk a little bit more in depth, get the membership prepped for what to expect down the road. So in all my time I've been up here, which has been short, only 4 years, SB2 was very unique. It was a lot different than AB 931, the use of force stuff that we'd gone through, in the fact that in SB2, I think everybody at the table knew that there was going to be a licensure program, and it was going to happen in California. So I guess from our perspective, or I'll let you answer it, either David or Tim, what were your thoughts when you first saw the piece of crap that came across the table? It was just it was the craziest thing I'd ever seen, to where we ultimately ended up for a piece of legislation. So either one of you guys want to go first?
I'll take a crack at it. One of the things that I think everybody needs to understand is the way things work at the Capitol with the committees, and particularly the Public Safety Committee, is that they can kill our competing bills, which would have been a sensible licensing program that 100% of people could have supported. And so instead, they forced an all or nothing on SB2, and they threw the kitchen sink at us. And where I think PORAC and the team did outstanding is that there was a lot of misdirections and efforts to try to distract us on things like the composition of the advisory board so that we missed the most important things. And it didn't work. There's a lot in this bill we don't like. It's different than some of the other legislative fights. But on the things that we had to have, where you don't have double jeopardy for officers that have already proven their innocence, where you have post making independent determinations as opposed to biased anti-police panel, PORAC did an outstanding job, but there's still a lot in the bill that we don't like.
How about you, Tim? What are your perspective on that?
So I think what made this entire process complicated and more daunting was exactly the kitchen sink approach. There was an opportunity for those advocating for police reform to latch on to what was going on nationally and use that platform to really go aggressively. And in politics, that's what you do. If you feel the wind is blowing in your direction, you go for everything that you can. And they certainly took advantage of it. And we saw pieces of this, what ultimately became SB2, and the things that were floated out during that process. In the year prior, we started to see a run-up of it, but it wasn't as well coalesced and consolidated. So when people see SB2 and they look at how many pages it is, you're immediately going, oh my gosh, look at all of this stuff. But what it really is, and using David's term, Frankenstein's monster, it is a bolt-on of a lot of different concepts, all placed in one bill with the idea, if I can get this, I get all the other stuff. And that's why we had to spend so much time working through dissecting it and trying to find the places where we could assert our points as well as we could. And the last thing on that process that I was struck by throughout is those that were advocating for SB2 and other types of bills were so confident in their positions, it really didn't matter what we said. And in fact, some of the staff members for the politicians said as much. Well, that's all well and good, but we're doing this anyway.
Yeah. And I do want to I want to thank both of you personally and also on behalf of PORAC. I thought you two made an incredible team. To have you as a source, a legal source for us to analyze the legislation and what was being sent to us, reviewing it, and coming back very timely and very rapidly with edits, modifications, because like you said, it really was a team effort. And, there was other groups involved, other law enforcement, police unions were involved in this, and making sure that we were somewhat all on the same page, because the amount of work that you had to put in for this, the membership will never know. But wherever I go, I always thank you for the great work. I think you guys made a fabulous team, and you continue to do additional work on us, because we're seeing so much legislation, so much police legislation. It's just, for when we first originally reached out, we were like, hey, we're only going to need you maybe for the use of force, AB 392, 931, SB2, but it's just it's like a watershed every year of new bills, and we just continue to send you stuff. It's like, hey, and now we're having to deal with stuff on the national level with the president's executive order, which is critical that we get out in front of that. So thank you again for the incredible work that you did on getting SB2 from its start, which was a pile of crap, to at least something now where we can work with it and we can live with it, and we can prepare our members of what that's going to look like. And I think it's extremely important that we get our association leaders and members to attend our symposium so they can hear it firsthand from you two of what are the expectations, what's coming down the pipe. I mean, Post is already working and drafting the policies and procedures and what that's going to look like, and try to get that implemented. Some of the numbers I've seen of people, the initial year, they're expecting over 1,000 cases to come before Post. That's an immense amount of work that needs to be done on behalf of Post. But also, from your perspective, as attorneys who are out there, dealing on the front lines of having to defend officers, what are you expecting on your end on having to defend officers that are going through the process based on what what the bill looks like right now? And obviously we don't know what Post policies and procedures are going to be, but what kind of workload do you think that you'll have moving forward on dealing with an officer that has to go through this process? David?
The honest answer is I think we're not sure at this stage. This bill is a monstrosity, and thank you, by the way, for those nice compliments. It was Tim and my privilege and honor to be able to do that. He and I sat down for probably, 2 hours and went line by line through the bill, because there's so much different stuff in there, from additional civil liability to investigations and reinvestigations. And a lot of the most important stuff, it's really thin on. Like, what does the due process look like if your license is revoked? As best we can tell, and I'll tease a little bit the PORAC class, we'll get a lot more into this, but as best we can tell, it looks like you get a super group Skelly hearing in front of this advisory panel, and then maybe you have another opportunity to be heard in front of the Post Commission. It's not really clear, and we're trying to work some stuff out with the regulations on that. And then you have a full-blown evidentiary hearing with an administrative law judge. The two biggest questions on what the workload will look like is, number one, is Post going to conduct its own parallel investigations and compel officers to come and provide statements? Right now, it looks like that's not their intention, but the bill does allow for it. And then the other is, how many people are going to have their licenses revoked and want to fight those? And I think really it's going to take a little bit of time to figure that out.
How about you, Tim?
Yeah, I agree with everything David said, and I do want to thank you. It was a privilege, and I think David and I worked well together on all aspects of this. And I would just add, he mentioned 2 hours going through it. We spent hours every time there was a new amendment, or what got taken out got put back in, or somewhere else. We had to spend immense amounts of time going back through, because the sneaky part of it was that something that was in one section got relocated sort of innocuously somewhere else but never went away. And so we really worked to try to pay attention to that so we didn't get any surprises. But I do think it's too early to know. I do believe our intent from the beginning in terms of the process would be to really have the agencies continue to do most of the investigatory work and make factual findings as to what an officer may have done or not done. And I think our hope is that that still continues so that a lot of the work that's done in defense of an officer or representation is really happening through a process similar to what we do now. And we just have to be mindful of the additional level like we do in, say, a critical incident or something where we're always thinking there's a criminal investigation, there's a civil investigation, there's an administrative investigation. We've got now this licensing piece of it, and then also there's always the Brady piece of it that looms sort of as the fifth. So I think the representatives, the attorneys are just going to be thinking a little more broadly when they walk into those. But, to David's point, we really don't know what that's going to look like coming out of it and how elaborate the second step may be.
Another piece that is a worry of Tim and mine is, are they going to try to go back and retroactively look at certain things? And there's not a complete retroactivity within the bill, but there's certain categories like dishonesty, sexual assault, and the one that we're really worried about is use of deadly force resulting in GBI or death. And are they going to try to dig up 5, 10, 15-year-old use of force cases?
I think that highlights everything that's going on right now. And you look at what happened with AB 392 and SB 230, and I think they'll do the same thing with SB2, is how there will be folks that will try to insert their own interpretation as to what was negotiated and what the bills ultimately end up with. I think it's super important that, if folks have the ability to come to Symposium, and I know I'm pushing Symposium on folks, but having the ability to talk to you guys, you negotiated the terms, you got into what every word means, and having that ability to hear that. So when they go back to their departments and they're trying to impose policies, or they're trying to change procedures based on what they think it means, they have that firsthand knowledge saying, no, that's not what it means. This is what it was negotiated, because they're going to do that. And we know that.
That's what I found also outside of SB2 is working with the other side is there, I don't know if nefarious is the right word, but sounds good for this conversation. They would remove it from a section and place it somewhere else, like you said, or they would reword it, but semantically it meant the same thing. And it's hard. It's hard working in an environment like that. Obviously, even in contract negotiations, the shenanigans cities and counties pull are nowhere near what we saw in this. But we did ultimately, the governor signed it, and it's going to go into effect. Based on what you were seeing from the language where we were originally at and to where it ultimately ended up, in your profession, your experiences that you've had, I'll hand this off to Tim. Just what can you say about that? Just in the sense of where it started to where it ended. I mean, Damon and I try to go to chapter meetings and we talk to people and we're like, it isn't as bad as it could have been, but sometimes that's not really like people want to hear that.
Exactly right. It's hard for people to wrap their heads around how bad something could have been when they're not living with it and they're not seeing the prior iterations. And as well as any of us in this room that where it started was really bad. All I can say to summarize it is it was tilted to make it pretty easy to accuse a law enforcement officer of pretty much anything that someone dislikes or found bothersome on some level, whether it was moored or anchored to any true factual finding, any legal standard, or any conduct that we would recognize as acceptable for law enforcement. Those were all out the window. If I didn't like what I saw, you shouldn't be a cop anymore. That's about where it was. And so now we've got at least a process in place, some standards that we can work with. They are still evolving in the regulations. David and I have been really trying to spend some time thinking about how to give officers the best objective assessment of whatever it is that might find its way in front of the licensing bodies, because there's several of them, but post ultimately, to give a cop more of a holistic look at their career and not just, I didn't like the way that one thing looked, you shouldn't be a cop again. And I think that's going to be the next phase of the challenge. But I don't think I'm really overstating it when I said it was in a version, I don't like it and you're gone, is about where it started.
I would completely agree with that. I won't give away too much because you have to go to the PORAC conference or the symposium. But one of the biggest improvements on that bill was the change from empowering this advisory board made up of 9 people, 7 of whom have no subject matter expertise and have personal biases that are required in order to be eligible, that would really render them, I think, render it inappropriate to have them on this panel. And they had all of the power to make political decisions rather than decisions based on evidence and based on law. And then they had a bunch of other red herrings that they tried to distract us with. And our team was able to pinpoint those key issues and put the power in post and at a high standard of clear and convincing evidence. So I think it's miles better than where it started. But the unfortunate thing, and again, this gets back to the way that bills get made in the Capitol, is there were consensus bills that would have had a fair process from start to finish that would have probably gotten 100% support on the floor, but they just got killed and never got through committee, so that the author could push this as you either agree with everything that I want or you're opposed to licensing.
Yeah, and you talked about it earlier in the show about the fact that they killed our companion bill, not a companion bill, our competing bill. So it really came down to just this one bill, and the obviously everything that was going on in the United States at the time, the pressure must have been immense on our elected officials. I was telling everybody, I go, there's no dam in the world going to stop back the political pressure to make sure that this bill doesn't make it into law, and obviously it is now. So like I've been telling everybody, it's really important if you can make it to Symposium this year. I think this is probably going to be one of the most important symposiums we've had in a while, just on the fact of listening to your presentation, because I think it's just vital, extremely vital, if you're an association leader or in leadership with a police union, that you come out and attend, because this is a sea change for our profession in a sense of now you have to have a license where we didn't have to have that before. So again, I appreciate both of you coming in. Do you have any closing comments there, Damon?
Yeah, we want to take it back to Symposium. We that's just part of the teaser here. Obviously SB2 is super important. We want people to come out and talk and listen and answer all the questions they may have on how this is going to be implemented. But also, I think it's important to come out and network with your colleagues and find out what's going on around the state. And we're going to culminate our annual symposium with our 3rd attempt at our first annual golf tournament, and it happens to be on April 1st, so it's no fooling. We are going to have it. It's a best ball tournament, so if you don't play golf, it doesn't matter. It's about coming out, having a good time, and enjoying the process, and raising money for our relief fund that allows us to do so much for our members.
Yeah. Before I close it up, any last comments? David, Tim?
Look forward to seeing everybody at Symposium.
All right.
Same here.
Thank you all for joining us on this latest episode of On the Job with PORAC with David Mastagni and Tim Talbot. If you haven't already, like and subscribe to this podcast and share us on social media. If you have any topic ideas, feel free to reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram with your suggestions. As always, we'd like to close this podcast by thanking all our PORAC members and our nation's law enforcement. We hope you stay safe and have a great day. PORAC is California's largest law enforcement organization and the largest statewide association in the nation, representing over 77,000 public safety members since 1953. Our monthly podcasts, as well as past episodes, are available on PORAC.org, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, PORAC's YouTube channel, or where popular podcasts are downloaded. Be sure to follow us on all our social media platforms and tag us with your suggestions for future show topics. To learn more about our organization, visit us at PORAC.org. PORAC.org. We are PORAC.